Welcome back to Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Last time we got through one of the biggest and longest battles we've had so far, and probably the longest we'll have in the whole game. This time, the moment has finally come for the destined duel. And we get surprisingly heavy map music beforehand. Of all the battles in the war so far, the contest for Fort Pinel is the fiercest to date. And from this horrific clash of weapons and wills, the Crimean army emerges bloodied and exhausted, yet victorious. The prize of Fort Pinel is no small thing, but it is the promise of additional reinforcements from Gallia, and the large Bednion army encamped in Castle Dayan that keeps the breath of hope alive in the soldiers' hearts. There is one other pivotal piece in Dayan's defense of the former Crimean capital: the severely undermanned Castle Nardos. As the day's end draws near, Tiban's small force of Hawks and Galleons cease their attacks and return to camp headquarters. Camp headquarters, isn't that a little redundant? Anyway. You might recognize this name from one of the Tempest Trials in Heroes. They were in fact referencing this chapter. And this one gets pretty much straight to the point. There's not many cutscenes before we get to the base. I like it that way. Yes, they did. They did have a lot of troops, but all that meant was more experience for us. Yeah, considering that they're an army of NPCs attacking a fort off-screen, of course it wasn't going to do that well. At least they succeeded in distracting them while we were taking out Fort Pinel. I think we know who that is. And cut straight to the report. I love that moment. They knew that this moment deserved special treatment, so they cut straight to the point with that cutscene. It's just really cool. And yeah, I got a lot of combat experience there. So, I've got quite a few things to cover in this base. I'll actually start with supports, because they're probably the least relevant to what I've been doing. So, no more supports for Ike. He can support Elincia, and if you have free support slots on Ike at this point in the game, Ike actually gets to a B with Elincia after only one chapter. So, if you want to get Ike and Elincia to an A, it's very, very easy. But here Elincia, she's, it's weird, why doesn't she support Lucia as well, even Bastion, or... Elincia, actually, I think she was the one, besides Volk, to have the most cut supports. And one of the cut supports is one that I really wish they hadn't cut. Elincia and Jill. That would have been amazing. Another cut support was Elincia and Nephany, which is funny because I actually have those two supported in Heroes. But yeah, Elincia and Jill would have been great. So, I can actually get Ranulf and Mordecai to an A, and I might as well do that, seeing as Ranulf only has one other support option, and Ike has no free support slot, so this is really the only thing I can do. Don't think I've ever got these two to an A before, so I'm actually seeing something new here. Oh, it's fine, you don't need to change. I mean, your shoving abilities are so useful. I've been keeping you in the party this long. That really says something. Pretty short one, but that's alright, I guess. I might as well do Titania and Rice, because I doubt Titania's going to get a higher support rank with other people before then. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but Titania and Boyd supports are hilarious. So, it gets up to the A, and there's a bit where it almost looks like Boyd has a crush on Titania, but then he goes and says, "You're like a really nice mom," or something. And then Titania's response is, "Boyd, how old do you think I am?" That's a great support. I might have mentioned that one before, but yeah. And we have an interesting support here. Very interesting. I've mentioned this, well, actually, if you've seen my video where I talked about hopes for Fire Emblem Switch, I actually mentioned this. Oh, and that's also a great line. I still remember that line. And now I can't see Lost in Thought without adding All Alone in my mind. So, Khalil falls in love with Joffrey in the Caesar port, but the reason why I mentioned it in that video is because it's an example of a support that you probably wouldn't be able to do in today's everyone can marry everyone system, because in the B, Khalil realizes that he's completely in love with Alicia, and she reluctantly agrees, okay, I'll stop pursuing him, and instead I'll help him win Alicia's heart. It's kind of an interesting relationship that you don't see often in today's support system. I can get Vulcan Bastion to a B. It's kind of a shame that I might not be able to get them to an A. I could try and deploy Bastion in the, next few chapters, because their A support is a pretty significant sequel hook. Bastion actually has spies everywhere. I'm very glad they are. Bastion would be a real problem to have to deal with as an enemy. But, yeah, that doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Their A support is where things get really interesting. And then we have that. Other than that, we just have... I might as well do this one now, even though it's a bit of mood whiplash, only because I'll finally be able to make the word support not glowing green. I've had this unlocked since the very beginning of the game, but I was kind of hoping that I'd get Titania higher with Mist, but guess I held off on that support too long. Oh, and depending on when you do this support, the timing of Titania and Rice's first meeting will obviously be different. Well, we got through a few chapters without a staff, and in Radiant Dawn, staff uses get a bit less useful because healing items are so good. Well, I'm kind of glad I'm doing this now, because it gives a bit of backstory on these two. I'm guessing Titania was unpromoted back then, because otherwise her being almost killed by a single bandit would be really embarrassing. Well, that's interesting. Maybe he's secretly a tsundere. With the Sun side being so ridiculously exaggerated that the dere side is almost impossible to notice. Well, I guess we have this guy to thank that we have Titania on our side, which is amazing. And a bit more backstory. And pies. This was before a certain game in the series became obsessed with pie for some reason. That's actually not a bad support for the only rank that I'll be showing this. See, Largo joins late and he still has 4 supports. Why not anyone else? I forgot he supported Mia though. Mia has some really good supports actually. But I guess I can do this one now. It's kind of funny, I don't actually find Joffrey and Elincia's supports all that romantic in this game. And yet, they are the only pairing option in Radiant Dawn. Well, the only Elincia pairing option. There are a lot of people who don't really like Joffrey all that much. They find him to be just a very generic knight character, which I kind of understand. He doesn't really have that much depth to him. He's basically just, I am a knight, I protect the princess, I am also in love with her. He's kind of like Seth, only not as developed and joins way later. Oh, and he also has this whole overprotectiveness thing, which was also kind of similar to Erica and Seth's supports. It seems like they have to have this obligatory Lord and Retainer shipping in at least, like, one group of characters in every game. But aha, yes, that's the benefit of being a princess. You can order anyone to do anything and they can't say no. So, that support's over. Now, I guess I'll do outfit first. We ran down a lot of weapon users in the last chapter, so I'm not going to need that for a bit. In fact, it might be beneficial to have one free weapon slot on Ike. Otherwise, you're going to have to send something to the convoy later. And having an elixir is not a bad idea. Do I have another spare elixir? Doesn't look like it, except I'm sure somebody here has to have an elixir on them. I think Rayson does, and I probably haven't used that. Yeah, he does have one. And seeing as he's not really getting attacked much, might as well trade his elixir over to Ike. So that's good. Elincia will take a... I've got a lot of staves here. Lots of staves. Recover might not be a bad idea, actually. Sort of want to keep Rescue in reserve, but Sleep might help, actually. I might want to try that. Nephany, you definitely need some fresh weapons. Let's go ahead and take an extra Silver Lance. That should be fine for now. Mist. Okay, so Mist, you want to make... Actually, I'll talk about Mist later. Jill... Wow, all of your weapons are in single-use durability. That's not good, and that Brave Axe is low. In fact, I might want to Hammer and Staff that Brave Axe. That might not be a bad use of that, so... I might not be needing this. I think there are Sleep Bishops in this chapter, though, so I might as well keep taking it now. In that case... Actually... Let me try something. I'm going to give that to you, and then you can take the Hammer and Staff, and then I can swap it out during the chapter itself. So I'll repair that Brave Axe. I don't need this anymore. Maybe I'll go ahead and take the Flame Lance. I still want to use that, but maybe not just yet. And actually the Laguz Axe isn't a bad idea in this chapter. Might as well load you up with some decent weaponry. Let's see what I can... I think I should start using my Silver Blades now. That's probably a good idea, so I'm going to go ahead and give one of my Silver Blades to Stefan, probably. And you need something better. Guess I go for a hammer here, even though effectiveness weapons are pretty bad in this game. Gatry, I think, at the moment is fine on weapons. Still not at a D rank in swords. Soren's also fine, I'm pretty sure. He is at a D and stuff, so I could get men for him if I want to, but it's kind of overkill. And I think at this point, that's everything that I need. Although, those extra boltings... I guess I can... I'll trade one bolting to Rayson, just in case Soren needs to grab that during the chapter. And that should be fine. I'll talk more about preparing Ike and someone else once I do... I'll do award experience and skills, but first, let me just check something. You know, you might as well take Savior. You've got pretty good weight, and you have some decent stats too, so not having your stats lowered is probably decent. Soren still has counter, even though it's really been useless. Speaking of which... Can I fit something onto you if I remove counter? Corrosion, which is terrible. Wrath is not bad for Soren, but I'm saving Wrath for someone else. You know, Nile might not be a terrible idea. Because the boss of this chapter does have Miracle, which can get annoying. And Corrosion is a really, really bad skill. You know, I guess for now I'll put that on you. Even though it's unlikely to really be doing all that much. I feel like I should have given Miracle to Ike. Miracle actually might be not a bad idea on Ike at this point. And now Ward Experience. So, first things first, Gatry didn't quite reach level 16, so let's level him up. Please gain defense. No. I don't want to have to use a Draco Shield on you, but I may have to if you get really unlucky. And let's see. Might as well level up Titania once. Who knows, she might end up getting transfer bonuses, maybe. She gets a little lucky with speed, which she didn't get there, but she might be able to cap that, or skill maybe? Okay, it'll cost me a little bit to level up Ike once, and I think I might actually save for this because of one very specific reason. Because if Ike gains 1 point of speed here, I'll be able to use a speed wing to cap it. I don't normally need a speed wing to cap Ike's speed, but I might have to in this situation. Okay, there we go, 1 point of speed. So, Ike normally has cap speed by now. In all of my other files, he's had cap speed by now. He's usually had cap speed since a long time ago, and I've even been using the freaking Archer band, but he just got so badly screwed. I feel like now is a pretty good time to use my stat boosters. We're pretty close to the end of the game, and I have characters who are very close to capped in some stats, so I'm gonna go ahead and finally do this. I hate to waste one of my speed wings on Ike because he usually caps this naturally, but technically speaking, he doesn't need cap speed now, and I could wait and see if he somehow manages to cap it naturally. I feel like I'm probably going to end up using it anyway. I'll keep the speed wing on him for now. So, one thing that I do want to do though here is Jill. Now, Jill is at level 17, she only has 3 more levels, and she's not that likely to gain defense twice, but she is 2 points off capping it, so I might as well do this now. So Jill now has transfer bonuses to defense. The main reason why I want to focus on this is because Jill's transfer bonuses in particular are very important. Giving Jill transfers helps out a lot in Radiant Dawn, so I want to give her as much transfers as possible. Now, if she gains speed a few times, I might be able to use a speed wing to cap that as well, and Jill with transfers to speed is pretty good. She'll have to gain a couple of points of strength for me to be able to cap that, but she is getting decent in some of her stats. Unfortunately, I don't think Miss will be hitting level 20, which is a shame because she'd be getting transfer bonuses to magic and speed that way. I really don't want to have to use a Draco Shield on Gatry, but let's just wait for that. And Soren should hopefully be capping magic and speed naturally. In fact, speaking of which... yeah, no, let's not do that. Does raise him to exactly 99, but he'll probably level up during the chapter anyway. I think I'm fine with bonus experience for now. So now I can show this info conversation. This is a really good lead-in to what I'm going to be talking about for the rest of this base. And yeah, this is going to be dramatic because there's no music here. Even though this is mostly just recaps of what happened much earlier, in case you've forgotten. But Titania never knew, and she really needs to know. And Ike's had a lot of growing up to do. He's come very far since the beginning of the game. I almost feel like the localizers added this. Oh, I mean, no, they probably wouldn't have taken jabs at their own voice acting like that, but maybe this is. I'm going to treat this as a joke on how the voice acting, especially for the Black Knight, is very hard to hear in that scene. I think Grail's voice is pretty decent, though. Don't know if I mentioned this before. The only other role that I've heard Grail's voice actor do is some random commando who shows up at the end of Metroid Other M. So this is mostly just recapping that cutscene. It's interesting just how well they managed to evoke exactly what happened in that cutscene just in words. Because this describes what happened in the cutscene almost perfectly. That is very, very true. Ike was very lucky that night. Interesting detail is that Ike's actually smiling when he's saying this. I never got to explain how I felt exactly about that scene during the video because I just wanted to let it speak for itself, but what Ike's saying here really sums up how I was feeling when I first saw that scene, when I first played this game at the time. Because they do give you that hope. Grail isn't dead, and Ike's carrying him back to the fort. You see everyone rush out of the fort. You think maybe it's going to be okay, and then it just cuts straight to his grave. I love the way they did that. It just really captures the emotion of that moment. Well, I mean, at least that wasn't Chapter 11, because if you have Ike fight the Black Knight there, good luck, literally. So we already know this, but just explaining it to Titania here. It just so happens that, ironically, the Black Knight brought one with him. Though I almost feel like, given the Black Knight's character, even if we didn't have Ragnall at this point, he probably would have offered it to Ike right now. Which reminds me a little bit of Meta Knight in the Kirby series, but he's always after a fair duel. And yes, Ike's had his strongest weapon this whole time, he just hasn't used it. So, Alondite, I don't know, I'll be probably pretty busy during the Black Knight battle itself, so I guess I can talk about this. Alondite was called Etard in the Japanese version, and there's kind of a funny story revolving around that name, because it got changed to Alondite, and that led to interesting things in Radiant Dawn with a certain weapon, but the reason why it did was because I've mentioned before the concept of internal names. Some items are called different things in the game's code. So the sword that's called Etard in the Japanese version is called Alondite in the game's code, which I believe is named after Lancelot's sword from Arthurian mythology. This is why this conversation has an importance rating of 2 stars. It is actually gameplay hints. Titania is pointing out something very important. So, now to finally discuss this. We will be fighting the Black Knight in this chapter. The Black Knight is optional. It's also a duel fight that only Ike and Mist are allowed to participate in. Mist can't actually hurt the Black Knight though, but she can help in one other way if she has a weapon. So if Mist isn't trained, forging her a sword might not be a bad idea at this point. There's exactly one thing that Mist can help with fighting-wise. Even if she's not promoted though, she can still help a lot with healing. Don't worry, the Black Knight will never target Mist. He will always focus on Ike, so even if she's totally untrained, you don't need to worry about her that much. However, there is something in the fight that might be a threat to her if she isn't trained, but she can escape, just like Ike can. So like I said, winning this fight is optional. You get a reward for winning, and you also get a bit more story, and winning the fight is considered canon. Obviously, if Ike dies though, you get a game over. But there are ways to end this fight without Ike dying, if you don't think he's strong enough. There is a retreat point on the map, and you can choose to have Ike retreat. This will count as losing the fight, so you won't get the reward for it, and the story will progress a little bit differently, and I'll just say something bad does happen in the story if you lose the Black Knight battle. So there is a very good reason why winning it is considered canon. But if you don't feel like your Ike is up to it, you don't have to try and attempt it. It is optional. And here's the really annoying thing. In order to attempt this, you want at the very minimum Ike to have maxed strength and skill. Speed needs to be at least 24. Any lower and the Black Knight will double Ike. Ike cannot double the Black Knight even with capped speed, so the best you can do is avoiding doubling by him. Cap defense and good HP also help, unless you're going for method 2. What's method 2? I'll explain that in a bit. So, here is the irritating thing about the Black Knight battle. This chapter is in 2 parts. The first part is a traditional chapter that ends when a character arrives on an arrive point. The second half is the duel against the Black Knight. If you fail in that duel, which by the way, not only is incredibly difficult, but is also on a 5-turn time limit, and running out the time limit counts as losing, and thus you get the bad reward and something bad happens in the story. But the worst thing about this is, the Black Knight fight, even with cap stats on Ike, is almost entirely based on luck, regardless of what method you're using. There is no 100% reliable method to beating the Black Knight, and if you fail, you have to redo the main part of Chapter 27. It's really frustrating. So, as for the methods, there are generally agreed to be 2 methods of defeating the Black Knight. Both of them are heavily luck-based, and they rely on skills that have a skill % chance of triggering, so you want Ike to have maxed skill. The first method is the simplest, Ether. This is the method that the game expects you to win this fight with. The lunar portion of Ether will do considerable damage to the Black Knight. You need to activate Ether about twice in order to win. The Black Knight does annoyingly have Renewal, and Ike does 9 damage to him with max strength and Ragnall. The Black Knight recovers 6 HP per turn, so only 3 of that damage sticks. You need activation skills to stand a chance in this fight, and Ether is the first way to do it. The second method is Adept and Wrath. This method relies on getting Ike down to half HP, using Adept to double the Black Knight, and using Wrath to critical him. Normally, the Black Knight is immune to criticals. His weapon negates your critical chance entirely. However, as I've mentioned earlier in this playthrough, but I'll say it again because it's very important now, Wrath pierces critical negation. I'm not sure if this is a glitch or an intentional feature of the skill, but for whatever reason, the plus 50 critical bonus from Wrath negates critical negation, if that makes sense. So Ike will have a 50% chance of criticalling the Black Knight when his HP is under half. Because of that, for this method, you do want less defense, and you want an HP number that's good for getting into half your HP. Now, remember the Black Knight does have Luna, and when he activates Luna, Ike will take quite a lot of damage. In the Adept Wrath method, you actually want him to get Luna because that lowers your HP faster, but usually Ike can't take more than one Luna, and healing means problems for the Adept Wrath combo. So, Adept Wrath, the Adept skill is also skill percent, and you need it to trigger a lot in order to win the fight. You also need to bank on 50% criticals, so some people think that it has a better chance of success than the Ether method. I tried this, and in fact, I do have footage recorded of this method, which I got from an earlier playthrough, that I will be showing during the episode where I fight the Black Knight, because I want to show off both methods of doing this. From what I found, Adept Wrath is not as reliable as Ether. The thing about Adept Wrath, though, is it's more recommended on normal or easy than it is on hard. Because on normal and easy, you can actually prevent the Black Knight from ever using Luna by using this combo, which you can't avoid the risk of that if you're using Ether. On hard, though, it is impossible to avoid the risk of Luna. And that'll make sense once we get to the Black Knight fight itself. The Black Knight's stats are identical on all difficulties, yes, even on easy mode, but on hard, he has a change to his AI that makes the Adept Wrath method a lot less reliable. So, that was a lot to go through, but that is how this fight is going to work. And with that in mind, let's move out to Chapter 27. Like the intro cutscene, this is also short and to the point. So Ranulph has fought the Black Knight before. Ranulph was also there that day in the forest. Ranulph's snark is amazing though, even now. Funny Tiban should be saying this, because if Tiban did fight the Black Knight, he'd actually be able to damage him. Lagoo's Royals can pierce Goddess Protection, at least in this game. Well, we'll determine that later. On the preparation screen. Oh, this is actually a really great moment for Alincia. Wow, Bastion's quoting Sane there, although I believe Sane only ever says that line once. There, Alincia was intentionally creating a distraction so that Miss could talk to Ike in private. I love that. I was being quiet there because, one, I love that scene, and two, I really love that music. I like how Bastion is able to switch on a dime like that. But here we are in Nados Castle. For a chapter that I actually know very, very well, because I've had to do this chapter many, many times. And this is that affair that Ashnard was talking about before. Well, I'm glad we don't have to deal with the Black Knight until the duel with him and Ike. Here we are. One last castle map in this game. But this is only the beginning. We have to break through here in order to get to the duel. The moment of fate that this chapter is named after. Don't worry, he won't appear until after the first part is over.